The Hawkeyes have a new quarterback. Don't get too excited, but Corey and I will discuss. Welcome into Hawkeyes Live Special Edition. We're catching up from Tuesday's miss, and here we are on a Sunday. We appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully you got the notification. If you didn't and you're watching this after the fact, one big reason why you subscribe and hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We will also be reviewing the announced kickoff times for certain games. Those are quite interesting. Corey Brad is here, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And again, we are here talking Hawkeyes football for the next hour. Comments and questions are welcome. Super chats as well. We appreciate your support. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm all right, Mark. People were, well, there was, well, I shouldn't say people. I don't know that people were just turning over in their coffins waiting for us to go live again. But we did have somebody reach out to us on Twitter and say, you know, what's going on? Did you and Mark have a falling out? Do you hate each other now? You and I have made amends. We've mended fences, so to speak, and we're back.
That was because I was the bigger man and really extended myself.
Yep.
We had a falling out, and Corey just wouldn't apologize, and I just was the bigger man. Took the high road.
That's right. No, we've both been kind of in our own worlds as far as kind of vacation time away from this stuff. I just told you before we went live, like I'm at a point now where we hit June. Now I got to start getting into hyper speed as far as, 3 months seems like a long time, Mark. You know, it flies by when you're trying to get prep work in. And as I've said before, this is for me, this is not my full-time work. So, you're managing a lot of different things. As you know, Mark, you've been through a lot of different ventures. I got to get back on the horse here, but we've had some good content. I published a piece here, a video a few days ago with it's kind of my thoughts on the summer enrollees, because kids are reporting now. Most of these athletes have graduated high school and will be reporting or are reporting to Iowa City, moving into their dorms and their homes in Iowa City. So that's intriguing because you have some intriguing athletes. And basically the way I broke it down, you might actually enjoy that 10-minute segment I published, Mark, because what I did, I'd be curious to get your take from a national perspective if I'm on the right track. I basically listed 3 lines of criteria that I believe will determine whether or not a true freshman gets on the field his first year. Of course, injuries notwithstanding, those always can affect anything and everything, right? You get ransacked by injuries at a position, but people can go over and listen to my criteria and just my thoughts on specific players that I think could see the field. I can tell you one of those pieces of criteria is simply what position is it? What positions are easier to play at a younger age? And a couple that come to mind, one being running back, one being receiver, obviously defensive line. Sometimes you can get a young guy in the field that comes in on an obvious pass rushing situation, stuff like that, where you can kind of be a little bit more flexible. And then, depth, right? What positions are you deepest at? Running back might be easier to play at a young age, but Iowa's really deep at running back. Wide receiver is an excellent one. Could you see a freshman come in and play right away? Maybe it's a KJ Parker who's a speedster who was under-recruited, but now you got a guy in Tim Lester who's got a history, a track record with smaller, under-the-radar receivers. Iowa's got extreme need at receiver. Maybe he gets on the field, or Reese Vanderzee from Northwest Iowa. So anyways, people can go listen to that, but I enjoyed recording that segment. We published an interview that I had done with Joseph Anderson, who's one of the guys I think has a shot, given his athleticism, to maybe see the field in some capacity, similar to how a guy like Ontario Thompson did on special teams, made a couple of great plays on special teams this past season. He transferred on, so now there's an opportunity maybe to fill a role there. So anyways, more content coming. Hope to get some recruits here from other sports, as well as some non-24 recruits onto the show. And there's a couple of videos I got in the hopper I got to do. Peyton Sandfort's announced that he's back at Iowa for Iowa men's basketball. We're going to talk about the quarterback news, which caught some people off guard. Why I think it's great news for Iowa. But there's always stuff to talk about middle of the offseason. We're like smack dab in the middle, aren't we, right now? Because you got 3 months out from the season. We're basically 3 months removed. We had spring ball in there, right? But we're basically 3 months removed. Well, 2 months removed from spring ball, 2 to 3 months removed. So anyways.
But to your point, for guys like us that are working behind the scenes, doing some things to help set ourselves up for the season, it's coming fast because
Yeah.
it is now the 1st of June, and mid to late July is going to be Big Ten Media Days. And that is really at the point where I feel as though, okay, the season's really started, because if you're covering this sport, they're on the field within a day or two after media days, and everybody's on the field. And now you're covering position battles and everything that's going on. And so it's just full throttle.
So we can say this, and we're accurate when we say Big Ten Media Days are next month.
Yeah.
Next month. I mean, when you say it like that, it changes how you view the 3 months ahead. So yeah, it's going to fly by.
Yeah. And I, like you, since I left the last job, the corporate job, and have done this full time for going on 4 years. Wow, about 3.5 years. There's been little time for vacation, and so I've tried to move, trips around and still work and that sort of thing. And this time I just said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to clear my schedule, besides getting back to people and emailing. And I had several people make comments on the channel like, oh, is this channel dead now? Is Mark just disappeared? Like, okay, it's 4 days.
Yeah.
It's May.
Right.
I appreciate the concern, but yeah, we're going well, alive and well. But it is tough to get the motor running again and focused on content. But we will get to it as well, and check out Corey's perspective on freshmen getting playing time and being impacts for the Hawkeyes this fall.
And real quick, specifically the enrollees, the summer enrollees, because you had 3 guys enroll in the spring, and those are unique. I mean, I think that just changes the game. I mean, to get there early, Gavin Hoffman, he's coming into a loaded tight end room, but to get a spring under his belt is huge. Same thing with Josh Janowski up front. Offensive line's not typically a position you see freshmen play, but again, who knows? And then who am I missing? There's one guy that I'm missing. Oh, the punter, Reese Dakin, was there, and I expect him to be the starter. So that's very rare that you'd say, hey, we expect a true freshman to start, but given the need there at a very important position, that's what I guess will happen.
Before we get revved up on the Hawkeyes here in the quarterback edition, yeah, the 2 main items that I got met with, I did post my first video yesterday afternoon in quite some time, and it was about comments made by Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark that I took some exception to, even though I believe he's doing a good job. And boy, did the Big 12 for a video that virtually nobody watched. It wasn't like some 50,000 view video. People got all riled up, and they get hurt feelings about speaking the truth and facts about money and ability to compete, and people get all twisted and all just bent out of shape. And then the other one was I was on Facebook and saw on a Michigan Facebook group where they made up basically a quote from Ryan Day, and then they get 800 comments from people who actually think that Ryan Day would say, we're going to blow out Oregon, we're going to win all of our games, we're going to throw our national championship parade in Ann Arbor. That was the quote from this troll account. And 800 people, Michigan fans, oh, I can't believe he said that. Yeah, you shouldn't believe he said that. This is a troll account. He didn't say that. Why would
he say that? The best part of what you just said, why would Ohio State throw a parade in Ann Arbor? What a stupid concept.
So then, of course, I took advantage to name Michigan as my dumb fan base of the day. So they're officially the dumb fan base of the day.
I'm sure they took very fondly to that. I could have named them that a while ago, but anyways.
But this quarterback coming in from Colorado State in 2022, he threw 17 passes. Don't look up those stats, folks. You're not going to want to do that. But it's only 17 throws, but it is pretty dismal. Did not step on the field this past fall as a former 3-star out of California.
I'm just, maybe I'm just overly intrigued by this, but I didn't know that this recruitment was occurring. And Mark, have you looked at this kid's recruitment out of high school? I mean, he was out of high school. First of all, you attended La Jolla High School, which is home of the Sea Lions down in the San Diego area. Beautiful area of the country, by the way. Took a trip there a year ago. Got family down there. But here's a young man, Mark, he was a high major prospect. I mean, there's no question about it. A high major scholarship prospect. He's a 3-star out of high school. But he had decent offers for a guy I was bringing in as a walk-on. He was originally committed to Washington. All right. So remind me, Mark, who was the head coach at Washington before Kalen DeBoer?
Jimmy Lake.
So when Jimmy Lake got fired, Jackson Stratton decommitted. Now, it sounds like DeBoer did not honor his scholarship, so that probably part of it. But my point is, Jimmy Lake had him committed out of La Jolla. He also had offers from Nevada, from FIU, had some Ivy League schools in there, had interest from Oregon State, Washington State, ends up at Colorado State. And the connection there, Mark, is Jay Norvell recruited him to Nevada. Then Jay takes the job at Colorado State and takes Jackson once Jackson decommits from Washington. And the irony there, of course, is Jay Norvell's a Hawkeye himself and had great things to say about Jackson when they signed him. Now, again, I mean, you look at his numbers as a high schooler, he was ranked, I think, what you have it up on the screen there, 68th best quarterback in the country. He wasn't even in the top 100 in California overall, but he's got a big arm. Sounds like I have not watched extensive tape of Jackson, but at 6'4", 205, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of Mark. I was bringing him in as a walk-on. So they lost, what's his face? Name's going to escape me. It's a Sunday. I'm not supposed to be thinking about these things.
Deacon Hill.
No. Well, of course, Deacon Hill. I'm not going to forget Deacon Hill. No, the walk-on. Somebody will say it in the chat. The walk-on kid who just entered the portal, who's I don't know where he's at right now, where his recruitment's at, but he entered the portal. They needed another walk-on, right? They were already thin at the quarterback position. They go out and they get Jimmy Sullivan from Northwestern.
Brendan.
Who's Jimmy Sullivan? Jimmy Sullivan's the quarterback Iowa has in 25. See, I am not supposed to be thinking in these terms on Sundays. Brendan Sullivan from Northwestern. They'll get Jimmy Sullivan a year from now. But my point is they needed another quarterback with the departures of Deacon Hill, the injury to Cade McNamara. We expect him to be healthy here soon. However, had 2 serious knee injuries. Thank you, Isaac. Tommy Paholski's the walk-on that left the program. You get Marco Lainez through 1 spring, and then James Rezar isn't even on campus yet. I mean, I understand it. If you can get a kid to come here without a scholarship and someone who had a Power 5 offer out of high school, Mark, and who was on scholarship at a solid G5 last year, I take him. I would. That's my novel take. Maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but now looking at his measurables at 6'5", 210 or whatever he is, he doesn't scream mobile quarterback, right? But he's coming in as a walk-on. He's coming in to provide depth and snaps in practice, and he does have college football experience, which is more than you can say about Marco Lainez, with the exception being very late in that Tennessee game. It's more than you can say about true freshman James Rezar. So it's a win. Now they've got some numbers back. What do they be 5 deep now at quarterback, including the walk-on? That's enough. Now, quality depth, that's yet to be seen. But, I mean, even right now, you have to feel better about where the quarterback position is than a year ago from now, right? Like, we don't know what Cade's health is right now, but we also didn't know what Cade's health was a year ago, and that came to fruition when he got hurt during Kids Day and then got seriously hurt during the season. But now they have Brendan Sullivan, who's got game experience, Cade McNamara, who's got game experience, and a guy in Jackson Stratton who's been in college a couple of years and has taken snaps, and Marco Lainez has taken a few snaps. Deacon Hill is gone. Joe Labus is gone. I know some people like Joe. He just was never going to play here. And Yeah, so I think it's a good ad as a walk-on. Certainly, if Iowa had put him on scholarship, that would have been a big quandary as to why they were doing that. They're not. Now, why is Jackson Stratton transferring to Iowa as a walk-on? That would be a question that I would have for Jackson. I've not talked to him since he committed. Again, I've been on vacation myself. But I'd be curious, Mark, does this mean that he had no other scholarship offers? I doubt that. He was on scholarship at Colorado State. Yeah, his numbers were 17 throws were not good. But, maybe he picked Iowa as a place to walk on because they sold him. They sold to him the idea that, hey, if you work, you can get on scholarship and maybe get on the depth chart at some point. I don't know. He's from Southern California, so it's not like he's coming here to be closer to home.
So evaluating quarterback room, I would say on the surface, not knowing the plight of Cade McNamara going into last season, that at this point last year, the quarterback room was better in this way. We didn't know that Cade McNamara was going to be injured. We thought he was going to be a more than mid-level quarterback in the Big Ten. However, now we've got more knowledge of his situation, his injuries, and possibilities. So to make that comparison now with full knowledge of everything now that's happened in the past year, I would say the quarterback situation is better now, simply because Brendan Sullivan is a much better quarterback than Deacon Hill. He's a significant upgrade from Deacon Hill. That's why I would evaluate the position to be better right now.
But with that being said, Cade was coming off a serious injury a year ago at this time.
Yes, and now he's coming off 2 years of injuries.
Right.
Yes. Now, in terms of this quarterback here, Stratton, yeah, we don't have game evaluation on him. Somebody could dig up 17 passes. I don't know if they're on YouTube. If you look up the San Jose State game from 2022, Colorado State, San Jose State, I don't know if YouTube goes quite that deep, but it certainly may. I'm sure those games are on TV somewhere. So you could look up 17 passes. However, based on everything that you just outlined, other than that, the evaluation coming out of high school and everything else involved, yes, win, 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 win. Very little downside, more upside than downside. It would have to be a catastrophic situation for him to be playing meaningful snaps this year. Therefore, his best contribution is, does he provide the second and third team defense challenging reps in practice? Is he capable enough to replicate a Big Ten quarterback, at least reasonably so, in practice?
Yeah. You just need competition. That room needs competition. And here's the big thing I go back to, and I even stated it with the commitments of Sullivan and Gill from Northwestern. I don't want to make too much out of this, but you have a different offensive coordinator, a guy who's a quarterback coach by trade, who's had extreme success with receivers. Those are Iowa's two biggest positions of struggle. Like, again, what's Tim Lester? I'd be curious to know what the recruiting process was like with a guy like Jackson Stratton. So my guess is when Tommy Pahalski left, they were like, okay, our aim is to go get a scholarship quarterback with experience. They did that with Brendan Sullivan. And Mark, I said this weeks ago, I said, they're probably going to add a walk-on. I mean, they need a walk-on on the roster. Now, here's what happens, Mark, and you know this. This becomes a bad thing if and when the NCAA makes this 85-person rule as it relates to roster totals. That will change the game completely. And we can talk about that. I don't know how much you've discussed that on the channel, but that's a potential big impact to the sport. But as it sets right now, this is a positive thing. Jackson Stratton has had more experience last year than Deacon Hill had at Wisconsin. Deacon Hill never played any snaps at Wisconsin I'm aware of. He was on scholarship at Wisconsin. And he came here and was the second string quarterback, Mark. So they're getting a guy with slightly more experience who I would project to end up being third-team quarterback, fourth-team quarterback, probably fourth. And that's if James Reesar doesn't come on right away. Because I would think as of right now, if you had to put together, if they had to list the the order of the pecking order for these quarterbacks, it would be Cade McNamara, Brendan Sullivan, Marco Lainez, and then number 4 would either be Jackson Stratton or James Rezar. How could you even put Rezar on when he's not even on campus? But Stratton isn't on campus either. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I look at it. I just wonder what the recruiting process was like for Stratton with Tim Lester at the helm. Because the first thing you think of, Mark, when you hear, oh, he's from Colorado State, is you think, oh, he had a connection with John Budmeyer because Budmeyer was the OC there. He committed to Colorado State, flipped to Colorado State right after Budmeyer got fired. So he flipped because Norvell took over for that coaching staff with the crazy guy whose name escapes me. Who's the coach that Budmeyer was under that kind of had some what was that guy's name? He's a baldy. He's a baldy. Not like James Franklin bald, but he's bald. He's very bald.
Was that when Steve Adazio went there?
Yes, Steve Adazio.
Yes.
Wasn't he bald?
Yes.
Okay. Steve Adazio. So Steve Adazio leaves, and Stratton committed to that Colorado State team that had poached Norvell from Nevada. So I don't believe it. As far as I'm aware, it's not a connection to John Budmeyer like Deacon Hill was. Okay. And then your next question is, was it the connection to Jay Norvell? Maybe. I mean, maybe. He was on scholarship there, entered the portal. Would I be surprised if Kirk Ferentz didn't put a call into Jay? Frankly, I'd be surprised I'd be almost shocked if he didn't. Don't you think, Mark? Like, as far as I'm aware, I don't think Kirk has any bad relationship with Jay Norvell. I believe they're on good terms. I would think Kirk would have called Jay and said, hey, what can you tell me about this young man that you've had on scholarship? So I would think that means that he was given a positive endorsement. And again, Iowa got him in as a walk-on.
And I also think that in this day and age of social media and the proliferation of so many camps, that there are connections out there behind the scenes and underneath the surface that we can't necessarily connect the dots on.
Yeah, maybe Spencer Petrus. He's from California. Maybe he was the connection. I don't know.
Isaiah here believes that Marco Lainez is not long for Iowa City.
Isaac?
I'm sorry, Isaac.
Yeah. Well, as what's his face said in the chat, if I kind of agree with Kelvin in the chat, if Marco's afraid of walk-ons, then it might be time for him to leave. I don't think. First of all, when's the next portal? Is there even there's not a pre-fall portal window open, is there?
No.
So the next portal window, there's no reason. There is no reason, Mark, no legitimate, feasible reason for a quarterback to announce he's entering the portal right now because he can't enter the portal anyways. So no, maybe Marco leaves after the season, but that will depend. It will all depend upon what happens during the course of fall camp and the season. So this is not some loaded situation like he's just buried on the depth chart. Mark, Cade has one more year. All right, he has one more year, and then you have a lot of unprovens. Brendan Sullivan may be the guy after Cade, maybe, but he, Again, glass half full, glass half empty. He was clearly not the indisputable starter at Northwestern. So, no, I would sure hope that Marcos wouldn't have. If he is thinking of leaving at some point, I would think it has nothing to do with Jackson Stratton coming to Iowa as a walk-on quarterback.
And if I was running the type of program going forward in the new Big Ten where a Brendan Sullivan is, boom, the quarterback for 2025, no questions asked, shut it down, then they are not going to be the program that they have been and will not be extremely competitive in this league. So I don't believe that to be the case. I do believe that they will be a factor in this conference, regardless of what some people believe. We do have some super chats coming in, so let's get to those. Jackson, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the contribution, sir. How do you feel about Iowa State being on CBS? So, Jackson, we had planned on running through all of the kickoff and network selections for the games that have been announced this week. So we will give extra special bonus attention to Iowa State. So, Jackson, thank you so much for that. But we're going to run through the schedule We will post that here in just a second. We've got our buddy Sean here, who is letting us know that Iowa linebacker Ben Keeter just won the under 20 freestyle wrestling world trials. The world championship is on the same day as the Cy-Hawk decisions. No,
he's implying that Keeter's going to have some decisions to make here.
Yes.
Keeter's not going to play, barring injuries. He's got tremendous potential. There goes the Hawkeye logo, Mark. Now we get to see HDMI ARCO. There it goes.
We're working on it.
Okay. So Keeter's not going to play. And that's the thing. Really high major prospect. I know people have debated about is his future in football or wrestling. Long term, one would have to think football is the better financial decision, right? That's what one would think. He was a 4-star recruit at Iowa City, real physical specimen. I don't know if you saw Gable Stevenson, the famous wrestler from Minnesota. He is now trying out. I see he's trying out, or he's been invited to like the Bengals or something to try out for them, or they've signed him or something. Anyways, I think long term, Ben Keeter is likely going to play football, I would think. But boy, he's a talent, no question on the mat. And I don't know how that would work. I would guess that he would be granted an exception to not be with the team that week, if that's what I didn't know that, because I really don't follow Iowa wrestling. I've stated that in the past. Thank you, Thor. He's signed with the Bills. Gable Stevenson has. So, yeah, unless they just get ransacked with injury, but they are deep at linebacker, Mark. Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, Kyler Fisher gets an extra year, as did Nick Jackson. Jay Higgins could have left. He got an extra year. And then you have guys like Carson Shire, who's really come on strong. They're just loaded there. So if I'm the coaching staff heading into the season, I'm going to say to Ben Keeter, we'll roll the dice on, because he can't wait till game week to decide whether he's going to compete at the World Championships. I would say, all right, you go use Cy-Hawk week and compete if that's what you want to do. We can deal with it. Now after that, we want your full attention. I would hope that's how they would treat the situation. And Kirk has shown the willingness to deal with the multi-sport stuff. I mean, he dealt with it for a while with Brody Brecht, and ultimately Brody decided, hey, my best bet is banking on my baseball career. But that's not necessarily new territory. Now, a guy wrestling is a little bit different, but the seasons are a little bit different, and especially with the extracurricular, if you will, not just the college season, but everything else that looms for a guy of Keeter's talent. That will be a storyline. But I would expect him to compete there if that's where he's qualified for it.
What these super chats have brought to light for me is that I need to find my glasses or blow up the screen, because I have called Isaiah Isaac or the other way around, and then I have misread Sean's super chat. So
what did you say to
being
Sean?
here, folks?
What'd you call Sean?
No, I called Sean, but I misread the super chat because I didn't see the punctuation.
Oh, I gotcha.
So that was my issue there. Before we get to the schedule, and I love talking about schedules. I love schedules, and I have called Iowa's schedule the most boring in the Big Ten for a long, long time. But with the entry of new teams and fresh blood into the Big Ten, that's not so much the case. Now, before we get to that, I want your take on the Caitlyn Clark. I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but I'm just interested because I didn't know anything about it. Again, I saw the clip on Twitter, and to me, she was the victim of a cheap shot. I don't care what was stated before the cheap shot, whether she was trash talking. The officials should deal with that when and if that needed to be dealt with at the time that those things occurred. But you don't allow a cheap shot. And I don't know what the aftermath was in regards to that. Should have been a foul.
I think what I read is they retroactively called it a flagrant one.
Okay.
Well,
like I had all sorts of people. I made a comment about it on Twitter. Can't believe that I'm delving into WNBA, my first ever WNBA post, but it was a cheap shot, and I just couldn't believe. And then I had all this backlash of, well, she was trash talking the whole game and she deserves it and all this other business.
Well, I'll tell you this. I read an article today. Who was it? Was it Bleacher Report that published it? Regarding, I guess I wasn't around when Michael Jordan entered the league. I saw Nick Van Exel back in the day. Do you remember Van Exel? You probably do.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
in basketball back then.
Nick the
He
Quick.
made a comment on Twitter in response to what happened with Caitlyn Clark. I believe it was regarding a shot he took from Gary Payton his rookie year. It sounds like maybe there was some of that with LeBron. I don't know that because I guess I didn't hone into these guys' rookie seasons. Caitlyn Clark's a little different. The sport has been changed by her to a large extent. Like those other guys, the sport was big, had been big for a long time, right? Those were the next generational guys, but they weren't as generational to the sport. So, yeah, it was a cheap shot, clearly. I saw her. I don't even know. I don't even know who the woman who took the. I have no idea who she is. I have no idea who she is. Okay, so and then I saw her she wouldn't comment after the game, and then I saw her on Twitter. Again, I just saw this because an article popped up, an article that basically she responded to a thread saying, "Besides shooting threes, what does Caitlyn Clark even do?" And I'm just like, okay, I get you're trying to get attention for yourself. Like that's the only thing I can think of. You're just trying at this point. You're just trying to build attention and say, "Look at me, right? Look at me." Was this just a stupid comment, right? It's just a stupid comment. So, you know what? I guess it's to be expected. I know some people have been like, "Why would you go after the player that's made your sport relevant?" And I understand that take. But I also understand the human inclination of some veteran people maybe being a little resentful that she's gotten so much attention when they've put in the work and not gotten rewarded. They feel like they've not been rewarded for the work they put in. Mark, life isn't always fair. Okay. Life is not always fair. Some people are more talented than others, and Caitlyn's more talented than most of the WNBA.
Yes. Your amount of income is not directly related to how hard you work.
Right.
Sorry. Hard work should pay off and typically does pay off. That's part of the formula, but we're not paying guys on the side of the road for digging ditches just because that's the most difficult manual labor that you can find. I'm just obviously using that as a random example. That doesn't mean that they make more money because it's harder to do that physically.
I will say this, when you think about, and I'm not defending the woman who hip checked her, body slammed, or whatever you want to call it, but it is amazing when you think, Mark, because as of right now, like Clark has changed the game, and you and I have had these discussions. I have no doubt that because the ratings have gone up this year for the WNBA as expected. I don't know if they've exceeded expectations, not exceeded so far. The Fever are not very good. That's the other problem for them right now. But the salaries across the league have not been impacted. That's going to be a lot. Like there's going to have to be a lot that happens before everybody starts getting paid a lot more. So I guess what I do find somewhat intriguing is the fact that you have all these players in the WNBA, and some of them like Asia Wilson, and I'm sure Angel Reese. I know Angel Reese has got tons of endorsement sponsorship money, but like a lot, I would say the vast majority of WNBA players, Mark, are living for the most part on their WNBA salary. And then if they go overseas to play in some other country during the off season, they've got that. So they're making very little in the grand scheme of things. The disparity between what most WNBA players are making versus what Caitlyn Clark is making, not necessarily salary related, because we know Caitlyn's not making very much from a salary perspective. But when you think about all her endorsements, that gap is unbelievable. And I wonder if maybe if it is somewhat about money or if it's just about attention, but that financial gap is incredible. And I don't know that have we ever seen, I'm sure we have at some point, some level of sports. Can you think of an example of in another sport where an individual was making so much compared to comparatively less for almost everybody else in the sport? It is a unique situation from that perspective, but that's her business. Like Buick wants to give her money and Nike, whatever, but human nature is probably to resent that. So that's the only thing I can think to explain the actions of some of these players.
I think you're on the money. I have nothing to add to that because it's a complete just cheap shot and just unacceptable. But has to be the motivation. I just see no other motivation. All right, we will look at the Hawkeyes 2024 schedule, and in particular the games that were announced in regards to kickoffs and networks this week. So it all begins on August 31st. So we are 1 day shy of 3 months away from the Illinois State game that is at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central on the Big Ten Network. How do you feel about those 11 a.m. kickoffs?
Well, what do you mean we're less than 3 months away? It's June 2nd.
Yeah, what did I say?
You said we're 3 weeks. I thought you said 3 days away from the 3 month point.
I said we are 1 day removed from being 3 months away.
Okay, I got you. 1 day removed. Well, first of all, I don't like the start time. I hate 11 a.m. kicks. Okay, I don't like the start time. I don't know anything about Illinois State. I probably won't give them any thought until we get to August. But it is nice to have a schedule in place, I guess, and they're going to be on Big Ten Network. I know the question from Jackson earlier about Iowa State. I guess what I would say about Iowa State on CBS at 2:30. First of all, perfect time, perfect network. You better show up and give the Cyclones a butt kicking, because when Iowa had a September game on CBS a year ago, it was in Happy Valley, and that didn't go so well. So, not that Iowa hasn't played games even against Iowa State on ABC in the past, but this is a different feel, I think, for a lot of people playing games on CBS. There's just some nostalgia to it, and this rivalry. Iowa State's got a chance to be pretty good, returning Rocco Becht. They return a lot of their skill position talent. They got a chance to be pretty good. Now, they did lose their offensive coordinator in Nate Schillhouse, who's now in the NFL. But I give Matt Campbell credit. He's managed to find ways to kind of plug and play with that coaching staff as they've lost people over the years. So, love the second week 2 start time. Hate the week 1 start time. Week 3, the only thing I can think of when I see that, first of all, 3 p.m. is a great time for a game, but do I have to listen to Tim Brando? That's my question on week 3, because it's on FS1. At this point, that's really all I have to say on that one. We don't have anything for Minnesota, Ohio State, or Washington yet, or Michigan State. They do get homecoming against Northwestern, which will be a 2:30 game. Again, love the start time, love those mid-afternoon kicks. And UCLA, now that's the one, Mark, that I think a lot of Hawkeye fans are going to complain and moan about. Believe me.
Yeah, let's talk about this, because I love it. I love it.
I have no problem with it at all, but there are going to be some people that resent it greatly.
I love it. At the Rose Bowl. So when has Iowa ever played a regular season game at the Rose Bowl? Of course, they played Stanford there 8 or 9 years ago in the Rose Bowl. But to go to the Rose Bowl and have all of college football watching, this isn't. So the Iowa State game is a big game. And of course, everyone watching us here, for the most part, is going to be watching that game. But from a national landscape, it's always usually one of the bigger games and one of the best draws of the day. But there are typically 2, 3, 4 games ahead of it. But when you get to play that Friday night game, and it's not an FS1 game, it's not an ESPN2 game, it's a Fox game on a Friday night at the Rose Bowl. Love it. Somebody's watching college football on Friday night, they will have to watch Iowa football.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more question marks about, as it relates to the game. There are a lot more question marks regarding the Bruins than there are the Hawkeyes. So, but boy, that Friday night, like you said, that game won't finish. And Iowa State's done this, especially, didn't they play BYU like super late last year, Mark? I think was it BYU they played really late? They played somebody extremely late. But anyways, that game won't finish until 11:30 Iowa time. That means I won't be done with post game until what? 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Yes, it will finish up at 12:30 my time, Eastern time, and then I will be catching your post game until practically 3 in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, till 3 a.m. So,
For me.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that I like Friday. I know some people hate it because it intercedes with high school football. That's the complaint I always get about how Fridays are for high school. Frankly, I don't care. That's just my opinion. I understand people who don't like it. I don't care. And hey, if we're going to complain about Friday games, then why is the game on? Why do we have to keep having the Black Friday game against Nebraska? I like that, but what's the difference? We love the tradition. Now, I love the fact that game's a night game this year, Mark, and it's on NBC. That's another great one. That
Yes.
is a fabulous start time for Iowa, and I love that. Love it. Because it's in late November. It's going to be cold. All right. I'm guessing we're going to get, what's his face? Former Hawkeye quarterback on. Well, no. Does he do what does he do now? I forget. Guy for NBC. Is it
Jason Garrett?
Well, no, maybe Garrett. Maybe they get Garrett on the call because he's still with NBC. No, who am I thinking of that did the? Is he still doing Notre Dame games? Man, my mind is blank.
Doug Flutie?
No, my goodness. Somebody will get it. Burmeister, Paul Burmeister. Isn't he NBC?
Jackson's our resident expert on these networks and who calls for what networks. I don't watch a whole lot of Notre Dame.
I like NBC broadcasts. I like night games. I don't like morning games. I've always been that way, but mid-afternoon is great. I guess the games that I'm still anxiously awaiting to see when they're scheduled. October 12th against Washington. That's the black and gold Spirit game where they stripe the stadium. And then a game that may have big implications for both of these teams because I think Iowa and Wisconsin are on the same tier with expectations. That game on November 2nd in Iowa City. And that'll be the blackout game. So anyways, good stuff. And at Maryland, that's another game that's going to be interesting because you have the Brian Ferentz storyline. He's now an analyst for the Terrapins and the Terps, of course, without Talia for the first time in several years, but it's late in the season. So by that time you would think they've figured it out and lots of cool storylines. Obviously a very entertaining schedule. We haven't even mentioned Ohio State in the Horseshoe.
Yeah, of course, we're focusing on the games that have been announced this past week, and we'll get the rest of the schedule basically for everyone as weeks 1 and 2 were announced, and then those staple games, Iowa, Nebraska, and some other rivalry games for the final weekend, those were announced. But otherwise, it's going to slot and it's going to be announced as we work our way through the season, and the networks have a gauge on how important and how meaningful the games are. But I'm always looking for something different. That interests me. I see Iowa play Northwestern every year. I see them play Wisconsin. For as good a game as that is, and one of the games that I think is a draw in the Big Ten and one of the premier matchups in the Big Ten most years, I enjoy those games, but I know that I've seen them over and over and over and over. Just to go to the Rose Bowl and play UCLA, even though they're probably not going to be that good, I'm going to release some Big Ten power rankings that are not going to be too favorable to UCLA, but that's just, again, on a Friday night where I can focus on the game. I'm trying to watch so many games on a Saturday. There's probably going to be one other game being played that won't be nearly as good, most likely, at that time. So I can focus on watching Iowa, UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Just a different look, different venue, different opponent. I love it.
I was trying to find, there was a tweet about Iowa's Friday night games, and I'm going to have to find this. But one of my more memorable games the last few years, ironically, Mark, was that blowout in College Park a couple of years ago where Iowa forced 7 turnovers. That was a fun game. And I agree with you. The spotlight, having that on a Friday night, and that was a semi-normal game because it was a crossover game. But now you have a real abnormality in playing at UCLA for the first time in how long? Again, in November. And boy, what I like about this is, think about this, Mark. Second game of November, you're playing at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And it's probably going to be warm. And who knows, late in the evening, it may be cooler. But then the last game of the season, you're going to be playing at night in Kinnick. The difference in weather. I know some people like Faith in the chat says, are you all ready for Southern Cal to join the Big Ten? I'm not, because geographically it makes no sense. I get that perspective, but to me, embrace it now. If you love the sport and you love college football, you love the Hawks, embrace it, because this is where we are. And if you don't like the novelty of it, then I don't know what to tell you, because sometimes change is good, Mark. I know that some of this change with college football is maybe not for the best, but I'm going to enjoy the uniqueness of the schedule. And they also play, I mean, think about it. If you compare it to past years, not only do they play two of the new entries to the Big Ten, you also get Ohio State out of the former East. You get Michigan State out of the former East. You get Maryland out of the former East. So you get 5. Like like you said, it's no longer. I guess it's one of the more predictable schedules, because they still get 3 built-in rivals every year. But there's not going to be any Big Ten schedules that are boring anymore.
No, there are 18 teams in the league, so you've got 17 possible opponents, and you only play 9 games. So there's all sorts of variations of what the schedule can look like, and just to size it up for people in regards to how more difficult this is going to be for Iowa or not. This is a good example. Now, Iowa does draw what is expected to be the 2 weaker of the 4 teams coming in from the West Coast. So Kirk and company catch a bit of a break there. But having played Ohio State, Michigan State, and Maryland out of the East, so that could be a typical Eastern Division run of 3 teams, because the West always plays the East, and the cross division is 3 games. So basically what the difference is that you are playing UCLA and Washington instead of who? Illinois and Purdue.
There you go.
That's basically what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. And frankly, Purdue, what do you make of Purdue heading into the year?
I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah. And Illinois, I don't have a lot of confidence right now in Illinois. They've had so much turnover the last 2 years with that roster. Maybe they'll take a step forward. I like Brett, but yeah, I would definitely, if they had replaced Illinois and Purdue with USC and Oregon, yikes. And then again, you get at Ohio State. Hopefully that doesn't happen though, Mark, because again, part of the whole scheduling format now is supposed to be balance,
yes,
and fairness, and not having these lopsided schedules of difficulty of schedules, so to speak. So, yeah, Cole, I don't know what you're talking about. Iowa catching a break with not an easy schedule. We're talking relativity, right? Relative to the other 2 teams who are joining the conference, Iowa still goes. They play a team that was in the national championship game a year ago. They go at Ohio State. They go at the Rose Bowl to take UCLA on, at Maryland. Those are difficult games. And they play an Iowa State team who might be. Where is Iowa State right now in your Big 12 power rankings, Mark? Have you done any power rankings with Big 12?
I have not. I just started working on them here today. So I will have some Big 12 power rankings. That conference is so void of tiers.
Yeah, I agree. Are they in your top 4?
No.
Okay. They're not in your top 4?
No.
So off the top of your head, who's your top 4? Who's ahead of Iowa State?
Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Maybe they are pushing the 4 spot, because after that it's such a muddled mess, and they would be at the top of that muddled mess after that. So maybe they are 4.
Yeah. No more Oklahoma and Texas.
No more paychecks with Oklahoma and Texas, Big 12 fans. I know you hate me for it, and I got to hear it from you, but it's not real pretty for that conference. All right, folks, we do appreciate you stopping by and making this part of your Sunday as we went impromptu on this one. Yes, Cole, I would agree with you off the top of my head. Again, I have not taken the deep dive, but Kansas is right there as well as a better team in the Big 12. So catch Corey, of course, on from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and we expect the spotlight video right now is the analysis of the early enrollees.
Yep, that's the most recent edition of the podcast, week 239, and then air in the next couple of days. Get some Peyton Sandfort returning reaction to that. I think Iowa men's basketball is in a pretty good spot heading into this coming season as it relates to making a run to the tournament. They missed out on the dance last year, and then of course with the Jackson Stratton news, yeah, I mean now you almost start to think more. Okay, where does 2025 stand? The portal is always going to be moving. You never know what's going to happen with the portal. But Iowa didn't have scholarships to give out, so I don't know how much leeway they have with the Swarm right now. A lot of the attention recruiting-wise is now on 25 and 26, and so they offered a bunch of kids not that long ago. Men's basketball offered a bunch of 25 and 26 kids here a few days ago. So, and then I think the men's basketball team is going overseas this year. I think I could be wrong on that, but yeah. You know what? The off seasons used to really drag. They don't drag anymore, Mark. They don't drag anymore, and I always wish they were longer. But my favorite month of the year, I'll be open about this. I've stated in the past, my favorite month of the year is August because of the buildup, because of the start of college football, and most of all, Mark, because of the Iowa State Fair.
I know you love that Iowa State Fair. I know you do.
I just threw that in there for you because I know you love it, and you still have not made it up to the Iowa State Fair. Now, I know why you moved to Florida, because Florida is one of those states that claims they have a state fair that's as good, if not better, than Iowa's.
Yeah, that was at the top of my priority list of moving destinations, state fair locations.
Give me the general region of where you don't have to state what town you're in on the
I'm on the East Coast.
Oh, you're okay. So you're like Daytona. I'm curious to know do you know where the state fair is?
What do you think?
Florida State Fair is in East Lake Orient Park.
Which is probably close to Orlando, which is the middle of the state, I would guess.
No, it's actually in Tampa.
Okay. I was just in Tampa last night. I took a trip I was in downtown Tampa.
That's a jog from
it is.
The East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you make it night out last night in downtown Tampa?
Oh my goodness. Did you make it to Clearwater?
No, I was in downtown Tampa.
Okay. Well, you should have went over to Clear. At some point, go to Clearwater. I know Daytona Beach is beautiful, but go over to Clearwater. Go down to Siesta Keys. Tell you the one thing about Florida, as you know, Mark, everything's one big town. There are there's no. You drive. I always, of course, most of my connection to Florida is the western side, but you go down 75 and it's just city, 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 city. There's no breaks anywhere. It's just such a foreign concept. I'm in Iowa, so I mean, everything's a break. But
and I just came from Connecticut a couple of years ago, and it's similar to Iowa. You live in a town, and when you leave the town, you're traveling through woods,
right?
And then you get to the next town, and you're in a town and surrounded by woods, and then Ohio is something in between those two extremes, but here's my small connection to anything that would resemble the Iowa State Fair last night would be that I arrived in downtown Tampa and I was looking for a particular location. And I just figured there was a game because I get to downtown Tampa and there are cops all over the place. There are roads closed. They're, directing traffic. But then I see all these females in particular. I didn't see guys dressed this way, but with cowboy boots on. So I figured there must have been some kind of country music show downtown.
Yeah. Iowa State this past weekend, Mark, not this weekend, this past weekend, first concert in I don't know how many decades in the old Cyclone Stadium, which is now Jack Trice, George Strait, Chris Stapleton, and Little Big Town. Big time for Ames. So
that's funny that you say that because one of my best friend's wives and daughter went to the George Strait, Chris Stapleton, and whoever you just mentioned there just last week in Jacksonville.
Okay.
They were at the football stadium and they went to the concert. I asked my buddy, why didn't you go to the country music? He's like, are you serious?
So you didn't like George Strait?
Him,
He didn't like country.
not a big country music guy.
So
I know very little about Chris Stapleton. I probably know a couple of songs, maybe. George Strait, sorry, don't get it, don't understand.
You don't like him?
Not him as a person, I don't know anything about him, but as a music artist, I don't get it.
Well, he is a legend in the country.
Of course he is.
He is.
Yep.
I'm not a George Strait fan. I'll admit that. I think Chris Stapleton's got an incredibly talented voice, and I like a little big town. But for Ames, Mark, that's a big deal, and I don't know why they haven't hosted more concerts in that stadium. I'm assuming that will continue. I'll say this on the air. I was disappointed, and because the local news outfit that we operate in Story County, I was disappointed that the George Strait tour was unwilling to let any media into the show to cover the event. I thought that was disappointing when you're selling 65,000 tickets at, I don't know, $100, $200 a pop, that you can't allow 1 to 3 media people to in any way cover the event, not from a review standpoint, not from a photography standpoint, nothing. I thought that was sad, and I thought it was a poor reflection of whoever it was. I'm not saying George Strait is a person, but his people, because Iowa State, I can tell you that Iowa State made their efforts to allow some media access, and according to the powers that be, the answer was a firm no. So that was disappointing, but other than that, it was great for the city of Ames.
I wonder if he got some bad reviews.
I think he gets. Well, I don't know. That's true, but why would you deny a local county news outfit that's just trying to give some coverage to the area? It's just, I think that was. I see. Here's the deal, Mark. We don't need to go on a rant about local news coverage, but local reporting is such a thing of the past, and it's something that's unfortunate for so many communities, especially in Midwest Iowa, Midwest areas. And so, those are the types of things that have always bothered me, even growing up. They just, as you've kind of seen that, because in my lifetime, you've seen the decline of local newspapers and whatnot. And so, is what it is. It's the world we live in, Mark.
Yeah. It certainly is. So catch Corey from the Hawkeye the Storm. We're right here at the Voice of College Football. We've got a number of interesting and new offerings starting on Monday and Tuesday. So we will do morning headlines on Monday, and we will do that each week. That will just be a quick 15-minute rundown of the headlines each and every morning in college football. And then on Tuesday, we start our SEC live show. That's 11 a.m. Eastern time on the main channel. Appreciate you being here. We will be back here. Hopefully something happens between now and Tuesday night, but we'll come back and we'll fill up an hour because we'll talk about country music or Culver's or something. But for Corey Brada, I'm Mark, and we will see you on Tuesday. Appreciate you being here.